Hi, it's Stacy with Bridges 52.7, and I'm like super excited to talk about this. Wonka. Let's talk about Wonka. And let me tell you why I'm excited, because I liked the movie, and honestly, that was a while back, and I just haven't gotten around to this. So I'm finally doing some videos here, and was kind of going back over the story and my notes and different things. Just kind of, I knew that there were things that really stood out to me, and all of a sudden I'm seeing things that I didn't really even catch as I was first thinking about it. And this is what I love, is because the Lord he will take a story and I can watch it once, and then forever later, like something from that story will come to mind, and all of a sudden it's a fresh illustration. And I see some new thing, like God will speak to me in a fresh new way through something that I have seen in the past that I didn't even see in that way, but all of a sudden it jumps out at me. And that just happened just now as I was thinking about Wonka. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like bursting. So here's the thing. I really love how many of these kids movies kind of come out that have really, to me, very clear gospel messages kind of hidden in different, it's like same song, different verse kind of a thing. And so it's a similar kind of story, but we won't even maybe realize it. So the first time I saw it, I wasn't thinking, gosh, Wonka's like Jesus. But all of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh, he is a total Christ-like figure. So I'm going to unpack this and tell you why I was so excited about this movie. Even though some of my friends kind of tore it apart and didn't really, from a film critic kind of perspective, maybe they didn't see its merits, and that's fine. But from a story perspective, pointing to kingdom truths, I thought this was fantastic, and I love it for kids. I loved it for families. I loved it for me. I don't usually go on and tell somebody that I love something. I usually kind of, everybody's got their tastes and I leave that out, but I really did love this one, and I love it all the more now that I'm like unpacking for my own self, why did I like that so much, and realizing it's because the gospel message was so loud in that, I think. So here's the thing. He was this very much loved son. I would say very much like Jesus, who left the Father to come to earth on our behalf. Wonka grew up as a very beloved son of his mother, who passed away, but it sent him into the world. So he is now separated from his mother, goes into the world to make his mark. And she basically told him, and I love this, that whenever you share your chocolate with others, she'll be there, which I think the Lord is like, anytime you love someone in my name, or you do it for the least of these, like you're doing it unto me. So there's a very similar kind of gospel message that when we love or we give or we do things for the least of these, and we share with other people what God has given to us, he also is in that. And so Wonka goes out really wanting to honor his mother, but also to connect with her in that way and wanting to feel her presence. And so he wants to give his chocolate with the world. He is magical and inventive and creative, and he shows up in this town, and he is, so I also love this because there's this thing about like orphans and sons, and certain church streams really talk a lot more about this. I didn't hear about it that as much in the evangelical streams I grew up in, and some of my charismatic friends have this language a lot, and I've learned a lot from it, that an orphan and someone who has worked quite a bit with orphans in the past, and I see the differences. But when you are an orphan, you do not know, you have to compete for everything because you don't know if there will be enough resources. You don't necessarily have someone who's loves you and is looking out for you and protecting you. So you are now fighting for yourself. And so there's much more fear, much more need to perform. And like, if I'm good enough, maybe you'll choose me, but you also could get rid of me if at any point I disappoint you. So I've got to be perfect, or I'm just bitter and I'm jaded and I don't think anyone's going to love me. So now I'm just acting out of anger and broken and bitterness. So you kind of go to one extreme or the other. A much loved son operates very different. They know they have an inheritance. They know they are loved. They know they can't lose that love no matter what they do. So they operate out of a place of overflow and confidence and abundance rather than scarcity and fear and control. So there's such a difference. And this movie really shows those two mindsets really well, because you have this girl that he meets right off the bat, and they both end up in the same workhouse. They both got lied to. They both get enslaved and trapped. However, he's like, so we'll work off the debt. I'll get out of here. I'll whatever. Like, he is a complete optimist because he trusts. He says he spent all these years just trusting in the goodness of strangers and the kindness of strangers. Like, only a much loved son would do that, because an orphan doesn't think there is love to be found in strangers. So he has this perspective, and she's like, he even says at one point, oh, that's just your orphan spirit talking. Like, he doesn't even, she says some negative stuff and he just dusts it off like, that's just because you're an orphan. Like, you don't see the world the way I do. And he totally recognizes that. And I think so many times the Lord with us is like, that's just your orphan spirit talking. That's not my spirit. That's not how I see the world. And I think this movie is a great job of kind of, we'll see ourselves in one mentality or the other. And there's room for growth, I would say, in most of us. And sometimes we don't realize that until we see such a great contrast between the two and recognize like, oh, maybe I identify with her jadedness more than his optimism or whatever. So anyway, so her perspective was that the greedy beat the needy. It's the way of the world. And so don't let your guard down, because no matter like how good or how whatever, like she's just waiting on the rug to get ripped out because life has been one disappointment after the other. And he's like, all right, well, that didn't work out, but let's see what else we can do. And he's, for the most part, pretty relentlessly buoyant about facing his challenges. And which brings up another comment that I love. Graham Cook mentioned once in a talk that the Lord doesn't have problems. There are no problems in heaven. There's only possibilities. And so when Jesus was on the earth looking at his, what would seem like problems, he didn't have problems. He had possibilities. So like he's getting surrounded. He just suddenly disappears and is in another place. No problem. It didn't. Lazarus is dead. Not a problem. We can raise him. Like, oh, we've got all these people that need to eat. He didn't see a problem with nobody to feed. He just saw an endless list of possibilities. Like, so here's some of the possibilities that he came up with that are nothing like I would have ever done, right? Because I look at things the way the world does, but he suddenly paid taxes with a gold coin in a fish's mouth. And he fed all these people with like a Lunchable. And he had all of these, he healed someone, well, this is in the Old Testament, it was like, go spit in the, or maybe it was Jesus. Anyways, there's, like spit in the dust and make some mud and put it on your eyes. And somebody else like, go bathe in a river. And he had all these wonky solutions. You look at the Old Testament and how many different ways they fought battles. How about this possibility? Let's walk around the walls and see if they fall. That is not a good battle strategy, just for the record. Unless it's from the Lord and it's the exact right battle strategy. So God has all these possibilities. He doesn't look at the world like we do with all these problems. He just is like, I think he's just fun and creative and imaginative. This would be a super fun way that nobody saw coming to solve that problem. Like, let's try this one. I mean, it's like that line in, did you ever see, what was that movie, Legally Blonde, where they're like, do you think she just woke up one day and went, I should be a lawyer? Like, that's a great possibility. I think sometimes I get to see the Lord up in heaven like, why don't we just, sometimes I just want to go, did he just wake up one day and go, why don't we try this today? Because some of his solutions are so out there. So, but Wonka, this is how he looks at his life. Like everything is like, but what if we did this crazy imaginative, and it's all like crazy imagination, mystery, possibilities. And I love that because I think kids love that because it is the language of heaven and it is totally how God sees the world. And it's how he meant for us as his sons and daughters to see the world too. Like, why can't it be possible that in a day we can have a shop and whatever? Like, it may be a long, hard process, or he could just open up the doors in a moment, right? God has these creative ways. Why can't we eat chocolate and be healed? I mean, who's to say, right? Like what God can or can't do, because he has possibilities. So I love that kingdom kind of mindset that I see in this movie. So let's see. And I was going to say, as far as him being like a Christ-like kind of character, so he brings the language of possibility with him everywhere he goes. He does these things that really seem pretty miraculous. He has a band of followers that would die for him, really. I mean, they go through great lengths to protect and do things for him. And then at the end of the day, there are kind of, I would say, it's the chocolate institutions, but similar to the religious institutions of Jesus's day, who hate him because he is upsetting the balance and the control that they have, and who are doing everything they can to shut him down and to silence him. And he is trying to come around. And there's even a moment where his shop is shut down, all of his dreams, everybody that he's even seems to be questioning things for just a moment. But his band of followers, it's almost similar to, on a very lesser scale, after Jesus died, where it's like they had all bought into this thing and all of a sudden all their hopes are dashed too. And they're wondering what they believed in at all, and they're almost bitter that they got their hopes up to only be let down. It's like, we were better off before we hoped. And then there still ends up being a resurrection at the end and redemption for all of them. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think very much follows like this Jesus Christian story all throughout. Like, I love it. I get so excited about that. To be able to sit down with kids and go, look how this parallels like the life of Jesus. How fun is that for them? For if you have kids, for them to be able to start seeing Jesus in the stories that they see, like, instead of just thinking, well, these are just stories and they don't relate. No, no, no. What if Jesus was hiding himself in all the stories that they love? I mean, like, how exciting is that? It just makes my skin like shivers. And let me say, there was one other thing that absolutely wrecked me in the moment. There's this scene where they see the flamingos in the jail and in the jail, in the zoo. That was maybe prophetic. Anyways, so the flamingos are in a zoo. They could fly, but they're all just standing around in these cages. Well, not even like just fences, I guess is the better word. And she's like, why don't they leave? And he goes, well, that's the thing with flamingos. I don't think they know how. Maybe they just need someone to show them the way. And so later they leave like on balloons or something crazy, you know, something imaginative. He and she escape the zoo, but because they go up through the sky and over the fences, all of a sudden the flamingos are like, oh, that was an option. I didn't know that was a possibility. And they fly with him. And this to me was like the most beautiful moment. That's what Jesus came to earth to do, was to show people a way. And really that's who Wonka is in this movie, is showing people a way of possibility instead of despair, of being a loved son, knowing that his mom would be there for him, and knowing that he had this rich inheritance and all this possibility, instead of just knowing that he could trust in goodness to show up for him, instead of just, what does the psalmist say? Like, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. That is a much loved son, because an orphan just expects doom and despair and disappointment to follow them all the days of their life, right? I mean, there's a huge difference in how we see the world. But Wonka came to show this language of hope and possibility and love and generosity, very much in the vein of Jesus in that. And so he leads the flamingos out. But I would say that was really a scene for what the Lord is doing for us, that he is showing us a way to freedom, and kind of an interesting metaphor for what the movie was really all about. So that's what I've got. I would love to hear any thoughts about this little video that, sorry, got a little long, but it was really exciting for me. I couldn't hold back. So I would love to hear anybody else have any thoughts on this. And is this something you'll use with your kids? I would love to hear it. Okay, thanks.